From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernishan, and this is the first of a series of interviews with candidates who want to serve or continue to serve the county as members of the Polk Schools Board of Education. It's been a long time since so many people have been willing to do what is essentially a thankless job. Most years, whoever's terms are up are more or less re-elected by acclamation, or if a seat does open up, the departing member finds a replacement who is elected without competition. I mean, when's the last time you saw a campaign sign for a school board candidate? Well, they're out there now. School board elections have become very big deals. Conservatives have discovered the electoral power of cultural trigger issues like how we should teach our kids about history, specifically the history of racism, how we deal with the needs of the tiny number of trans students who sit in our classrooms, and what to do with books that explore those kinds of issues a little more directly than some folks are used to. Progressives, meanwhile, are waking up to the need to protect schools from those who, whether they realize it or not, are working to dismantle the entire system. Those forces are very much in evidence in Polk County. This year, 5 seats on the Board of Education are up for grabs. But the story behind the election is a little complicated, so it's worth reviewing the basics before we get to the candidates themselves. 4 of those seats, for Columbus, Tryon, Green Creek, and Cooper's Gap, are regular elections for expiring terms. The Saluda seat is an extra election because the current member, Rob Parsons, was appointed by the board earlier this year to replace Sarah Bell, who resigned before her term was up to take over the Polk County Community Foundation. Sarah was only on the board briefly. She won a special 2020 election after being appointed to replace longtime Saluda member Rhonda Corley, who resigned when she left Polk County. Got all that? Hopefully, that explains why there are 5 seats on the ballot this year instead of 4. However, only 4 of the 5 seats are being contested. Danielle Gibbs, who represents Columbus, has no challenger. That leaves Cooper's Gap, Green Creek, Tryon, and Saluda with actual races. But here's the really interesting bit. Each voter gets to cast a vote for a candidate in each race. So it makes sense to get at least a little familiar with everyone who's running. I'm going to do my best to interview as many of the candidates as I can, but as in many elections, not everyone is what I'll call, for lack of a better term, a serious candidate. And I'm going to use my judgment, which is based on 20 years of working in community newsrooms, to make that call. First up is certified financial planner Mike Ashworth, who represents Tryon and currently chairs the board. Rick Koval and Mike traded the chair and vice chair positions recently, but Mike's a board veteran with 2 children in Polk schools. We talked at his office in Tryon at the end of August. Mike Ashworth, welcome to the podcast. We'll start, like we will with all the candidates, talking a little bit about yourself and your role in the community outside of the school board and why you decided to make running the school board part of your role in the community.
Okay. So my family and I moved here in 2010. And when we did come here, the primary reason was for work. But in that process, we had young children. And our oldest at the time was getting ready to go into kindergarten. So one of the big selling points for us for coming to Polk County was because of the school system and something we had researched, and we knew quite well that it was a good school system. So it was a primary motivating factor for us coming here in that move, for work. But as far as, getting involved with the school system, clearly once we got here, saw our kids thriving in the school system, I was approached by someone that said, hey, look, you don't have that many people on the board that have kids in the system. We think you'd be a great fit. And so I decided after a lot of thought that I would push forward with trying to be on the school board. So that just was to give back to the community. And that was the primary rationale for me deciding to sign up to run and to be on the school board.
You didn't start off as chair, obviously. You were just a regular member. Eventually, you became vice chair when Rick Koval took over after the passing of Jeff Tennant. Right. Now, up until a couple of years ago, school boards, Polk County being no exception, tended to just kind of roll along, taking advice from their superintendent and the staff, tweaking recommendations, and not attracting a heck of a lot of attention. Is that a fair description?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes.
All right. I mean, how many parents would you have coming up to a school board meeting in 2018?
Excellent point. We would at most have one or two at a meeting at most. Yes.
So then 2019, 2020 happened and COVID came, and suddenly school boards became integral parts of how we responded to COVID. You could not anticipate that. But you ended up being the chair after Mr. Koval decided he didn't want to do that anymore. Were you prepared mentally for some of the things that you had to deal with?
I don't know how you could ever have been prepared quite 100% mentally for what was going to be coming your way. I mean, certainly at the point where I became chair, when Rick had to step down for some health concerns, we had gotten a pretty good taste of the environment, what was going on and what I was going to be dealing with. But there's no way to really fully prepare for it. And all you can do is honestly, from meeting to meeting, I just kind of take it as it comes, because you just never know exactly what's going to come before you at a meeting as we go from month to month.
All right. So I guess I'd like to talk about this context, because your predecessors in the job, Jeff Tennant and Rick Koval, didn't have to deal with unruly crowds.
Right.
And didn't have to try to quiet people who refused to, be civil in public comments. Did you have any experience running that kind of operation?
No, indeed. In fact, it's not my personality to really want to have to deal with that type of situation, right? I try to avoid conflict as best as I possibly can. And I know that probably sounds funny thinking about some of the things that have gone about the last several months, but indeed, I really do not enjoy conflict. And I'll tell you, I am thankful every day that Mr. Tennant is not around right now to have to deal with this environment. Maybe he would have handled it a little differently than I do. I don't know, but I still think the same fight would have been before him, unfortunately. And I think it would have made him quite sad. And so maybe it's just meant to be that I'm here now and absorbing all of this. And it is what it is. I'm happy to take up the reins and try and do what I can to help the community.
Okay, well, let's follow up on that. Given how unpleasant sometimes some of these meetings have been, I mean, not the whole meetings, but, portions of them, why are you running for re-election? Really, it's probably not going to be any easier for the next couple of years.
No, indeed. I think it probably won't be. So again, I'm a big believer in the fact of feeling like you're being put in a situation for a specific reason. And I feel like that is indeed the case for me. And I've never shied away from that. So I feel like for whatever reason, I've been chosen at this point in time to help our community. And I just hope I can find ways to better do that in the next couple of years if I'm reelected. That's really my main goal, is just to continue to be a community-minded person. I always have been since I've been in this community. Again, I'm not going to toot my horn. I just know that this has been a great community for me and my family. I just want to continue to find ways to give back to it as much as I can.
That's probably how most board members look upon the job. I mean, someone's got to do it, so it might as well be me. If you have the flexibility that, you have the kind of job that allows you to pay attention to the school board. You were at the opening of the school yesterday for the school year, right?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Not everybody has the opportunity to do that kind of thing.
No, I'm very fortunate in that regard. I mean, I don't really have an 8 to 5 kind of job. My job, I mean, sometimes it requires me working crazy hours where I'm working on weekends, et cetera. But I am afforded the flexibility to be able to go and do things in the community. And I've been very fortunate in that regard as well. And that's, again, another reason why I'm willing to sign up to try and give back and do things in the community. Because this community has been very good to me and my family, not only from a standpoint of seeing my kids thrive in the school system, but also from a standpoint of, we have a great business here in this community, and I've been very fortunate to be able to be here and run it here. So,
all right, well, let's switch gears a little bit now then and talk about the challenges facing the school board. School boards in North Carolina have a set of things that they can control, and then there's a whole bunch of other things they can't control. And I suspect that a lot of parents and other folks in the community they aren't able to to distinguish between those sort of things. For instance, teacher pay is more or less set by the state. And you can supplement that a little bit with money from the county, right? Yeah. But there's only so much you can do.
That's correct.
So let's talk about the things that the school board can control and what you would like to see the school board do for the next 2 or 4 years.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a good question. Admittedly, when I got on the school board, one of the first things that I discovered was the frustration about what you really couldn't do. You get on, and I had this vision of being able to get on and be helpful and do things and make change. And affecting change from a school board level is really, really difficult these days. So as you said already, so much of it comes down from the state level that you don't have control over. And so that is frustrating. All we can do is try and control the things we can control. In this environment, I think the biggest thing that our board at this point in time needs to try and focus on as we move forward is probably community engagement. I think our school board was accustomed to, again, as we talked about earlier, having meetings where you have 1 or 2 people show up from the community to offer any commentary whatsoever, and typically not, they just come to sit in and watch the meeting. And now we've gone from that to having all these people show up that want to engage with us. And I think it's important as we go forward to try and find better ways to engage the community. I think the communication level can be better. How we do that, I'm not sure, but it's something that it's become pretty aware to me that it's something that I think we need to address as we go forward. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can do. Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, we serve the public, and you want to know where the public stands on things, and you want them to engage you. So yes, absolutely. We welcome engagement. What we also want to see, though, is that when people do engage us, that we do so in a thoughtful and respectful manner. And we have policies and procedures in place to address all sorts of different things that come to our doorstep. And we just need people to understand that we're constrained by those things and how we deal with stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that we have a mutual level of respect that we develop between us and the community and the folks that feel so passionately about things right now.
Would you say that the passion is perhaps a little bit problematic sometimes? I mean, the last school board meeting, we had, I think, a dozen people stand up and basically cheerlead your efforts, saying, look, we love our teachers and we appreciate what you were doing. Let's just keep it up. We wanted to make sure you know that that we support you. But in the past, we've had a lot of people complaining about what they perceive to be as your inability to implement your own policies or resist state policies or any number of things. I guess my question is, how do you moderate passion? Because passion needs to be controlled. You need to have, rational discussion, not heated discussion.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know that there's a great answer to how to temper the passion right now. I think we live in interesting times, and it is somewhat difficult. I mean, people are so divided at this point in time. It seems like it's always a fight about everything. I think, as the chair, as long as I am the chair, the best thing I can do is try to temper things as best as possible, though it is very difficult in this environment to do so. But just to try and get people to understand that, there are ways that we go about dealing with things. And if they will just come to us with those things and let us sit down with them, talk them through and do so in a rational manner, then I think the outcome will be a lot better than what we're currently seeing and experiencing. So I don't know if there's a great answer to it, but I think we can continue to work at it and make it be a work in progress.
Well, I want to go a little bit further on this notion of community engagement, because although I don't have a lot of experience with other school boards, it seems to me like this one is pretty approachable. I mean, let's face it, Superintendent Aaron Green, you can call him up. He'll give you your cell phone number, and he is extremely approachable. And I've never had any problem approaching you or anybody else. So how much more can you do? I mean, do you need to be more proactive? Because right now you're kind of reactive. You're willing to listen, and it's not hard to get a hold of anybody.
Right.
What more can you do? I
think that is the kind of the point behind what I'm saying, is that maybe be a little more proactive about what we do. Find some ways to engage in the community more, whether it's, settings where we have people that not at the school board meetings, where we get together and have things where we engage the public more. I don't know the answer to it right off, as we sit here and talk about it, but I do think it's probably a key to moving forward with things for sure. And yes, I mean, I do think we are approachable. And anybody that wants my cell phone number in this community and wants to give me a call, I'm happy to spend time and talk with them on the phone. And you know that firsthand. I think that's probably one of the frustrating things too, though, about this environment is that people aren't really willing to want to take that step to communicate with you that way. They'd rather take a stage and make it some big scene rather than try and deal with things as we have in the past, which has been in a much more diplomatic way.
Well, one of the recurring themes in all the previous episodes of this podcast is that people are talking about how social media has given people a tool to do things that perhaps they shouldn't be doing, or at least doing it with social media. I mean, complaining on Facebook is a lot easier than talking to somebody face to face, right? And I don't think there's anything you or I or anyone else can do about that. So could we expect to see like a community forum where instead of an hour and a half of sitting and waiting for you guys to go through the kind of boring administrative stuff that you have to go through, and then you get a few minutes to talk, we could see a forum where it's all about people letting you know what they think you should be doing.
Yeah, maybe that's not a bad solution. As we move forward, have something where we do that periodically with the public. I don't know what the interest of the entire school board as a whole would be in that. Only speaking from my own personal standpoint, I know that's obviously one of the things with the elections coming up this year that has been talked about is that they want to have some public forums for candidates to come out where they can be asked some questions and speak. So I think things like that are probably important. Though, I think the biggest thing is just to try and find a way for people to converse on a more even level, I guess, is the thing I'm trying to get at, where you bring down the issues and don't have the animosity that you typically have where we're interacting in such a negative way at these meetings. Just try and find a way to again, just come together and meet in the middle. That's really what I would love to see happen. I think that may be pie in the sky right now, just given the environment we're in. But, I live, I guess, in a little bit of a Narnia type of environment in my mind. I want to see that people get along. I love when I watch sporting events. I love seeing sportsmanship, right? I don't like it when I see guys going back and forth at one another or gals doing the same. I like it when you see somebody pat somebody else on the back. And I guess I always want to find the good in everything. And so maybe that in this environment is not the thing that we're going to find, but I just wish that everybody would get along is really the long and short of it. That's what I would love to see come from it.
And I think it's fair to say that we used to kind of do that. Even the Polk County Commission, the commissioners in the past have been very supportive of the schools. And as a result, we've got a pretty darn good school system, right? And today, however, there was this unfortunate attempt, brief as it was, by the Board of Commissioners of the county to make the school board a partisan election. Right. And they abandoned that, partly because former superintendents got together and told them in no uncertain terms that was probably a bad idea. And then it was canceled under the argument that this would make it very difficult for unaffiliated people to run for office, right. Which many of us are, right? But I'm not really sure what actual thinking what was going on there. Do you feel, obviously you're not in a position to be too critical here, but do you feel that the Board of Commissioners in Polk County is still as supportive of Polk County schools as they historically were? Oh, absolutely, I do. I think this environment's been tough on everybody, including the commissioners. I mean, they've been hit on the other side of it with people putting pressure on them, just like people have tried to put pressure on us. Our commissioners have been very supportive of us overall. I think there's a lot of stuff that probably goes on behind the scenes between our Board of Education and our commissioners that a lot of people don't see or know about. But there's a great line of communication between us. And I am happy that they did go backwards on that resolution that they were thinking about trying to put on the ballot this November. And I do think it was from the community speaking out to them as a whole that they realized that probably wasn't the best way to go. And I think they've realized, like we have, that there's really, as far as the ones that are approaching them from that standpoint about doing those types of things,
it's really not that large of a portion of our community doing that. So I think they've realized that, and we're starting to realize that, even though it's been difficult when you're constantly under fire. But I think everybody's starting to understand that it's not a large contingent of our community that's really taking that kind of stance on things and pushing them. And let me be clear too, our commissioners have been extremely good to our school system just in general in the past and continue to as we go forward. They're generous to our schools. They're one of the top 20 in the state as far as amount they give to their school system and to keep them up and running. So that's out of 115 school systems in the state. So they've been very good to us.
Well, and as a result, we are consistently ranked in the top half dozen school systems.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is remarkable for a relatively rural community, I would think. So in a way that kind of has made Polk County schools like a third rail of politics you don't really want to touch, right? And maybe the Polk Board of Commissioners recently relearned that lesson is what I took out of that whole episode. But there are other issues still burbling away, not so much under the surface. And one of them is our libraries. So before we talk about banning of books, which seems to be a national preoccupation of certain folks, there was a lack of staffing, I think, with regards to libraries in Polk County schools.
Right.
And we recently, correct me if I'm wrong, recently hired a new media resource person for the high school.
That is correct. Yep.
How did we get to the point where we needed to, fill spots that had not been filled?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a sign of the time, just out of necessity. We ended up doing that is because of the environment. I think, it's sad to say that so much is going online these days. So much of what the children in our schools, they read, it's from a computer or from their phone. They largely are not accessing books from a library. So the library system within our schools has gotten to the point where it really wasn't being used that much. So we didn't really have a need. And listen, as we struggle every year to meet budgets and try and pay our staff and keep the lunch lines going and things like that, it's been very difficult. We've had to pick and choose where we put money in certain years. So that was one of the places that had unfortunately fallen off. And this environment, again, has made it very obvious that we needed to have somebody back in that role. So I'm glad that we do. And it's almost out of necessity again, and I know we're going to speak some more on the books, but just with the issues coming up about the books, we almost had to have somebody that was a media resource consultant that was going to be able to lead the charge on these types of things going forward. So it was, again, almost a necessity that we put somebody back in that role.
Until, say, the last 18 months or so, had you had to deal with challenges to books?
No, indeed. No.
And yet today, it's happening in the last few days, we've had people very upset about some books. My understanding of the English language, which I think I'm relatively good at, indicates that some people don't really understand the words that are being thrown around. Polk County high school and middle school is not full of books with pornographic content. Right. And they aren't full of books that are teaching graduate level critical race theory texts. Right. And yet that's what the accusations are being made all the time.
Right. Yes, indeed. And, we have come back several times and reiterated that CRT does not exist in our school system, but we continue to have to come back to it time and time again. I think that's the national rhetoric that's being brought around, is that, that type of thing is going on in all school systems. I'm not going to discount that it may not go on in some, but I know it doesn't go on in ours. And we've done enough research on this and looking into it that I'm convinced of that. And with that being said, it is what it is, a sign of the times, but I do hope people will begin to realize that these things are not actually being taught in our schools. But as far as the curricula is what we're starting to get to, and the books that are in our schools. If there are bad things that are being circulated in our schools, I promise you, the parents of this community, as small as we are, we're going to hear about it quickly, and we're going to know about it, and we're going to be able to address it. So I just hope people will begin to realize that if these types of things are going on and it's not suitable for our kids, Polk County School is going to address it and deal with it in an appropriate manner.
Now, the last school board meeting I was at, you revisited the protocol for responding to challenges to books from parents. Is it fair to say that in the last year or so, you've kind of stumbled your way through how to deal with that because you're not used to dealing with it? Kind of like masking during COVID. It's not something that you guys have degrees in. So, maybe not the optimal responses at first. You had to reverse course on masking, last year. And now you've kind of changed the way you deal with book challenges. So can we talk about how you were dealing with book challenges and how you're going to deal with it as we go forward?
Yeah, so I think what we really lacked, and I think our policy that we had in place prior to all these book challenges that we're seeing was just extremely vague. It didn't give us really any set of procedures to go through in order to deal with this in a proper way. And I think what we've passed on the first reading, and we'll address again at the next board meeting with the second reading, and I think we will approve the policy, is a way to appropriately deal with book challenges going forward. And it will allow us. What we did was try to react to everything that was thrown at us all at one time. And when you take 16 books off the shelves of your library to begin reviewing them, it not only creates a lot of work all at one time, but also then what you find out is on the other side of the coin, because this is a two-edged sword, you'll hear from folks like the ACLU that say, why did you pull those 16 books off your shelves? We need an explanation. So it's no easy way to do it. So what we're trying to do is adopt a policy that will allow us to hopefully address any concerns that would come from community folks as well as from the ACLU if they see these challenges and want to know what was your rationale for doing that. I think this policy that we're about to adopt is going to give us a great way to go about addressing every single book. We'll be able to address each one by one. Now do it as a collective unit and then see what it brings. But I think it's going to be a much more constructive way of doing it.
And what the books that you did pull off the shelves before, are they back?
So no, they are not yet. And so the 16 books that were originally pulled for review, they went to a committee, and unless the committee has come to a resolution since I last heard about it, they still had not come to a consensus on what the overall opinion was of those 16 books as a whole. I think all those 16 books are going to have to be voted on as a collective unit, the way it was handled, which I think probably means that they all will go back to being able to be on the shelf at some point, just to have another set of challenges brought about on each book individually is the way it will be handled.
And who's going to be doing the reviewing?
So it's going to start with, again, that media person at the high school. And, there's going to be a top-down approach there. They're going to start there, put a committee together, review the books, make sure there's educational merit in the books when they're looking through them. Make sure there's not anything that just doesn't hold any value whatsoever that really should be taken off the shelves. I think we'll find that there may be a few books that are not educational in value that will probably be taken off the shelves at some point. But largely, I think there are a lot of books in there that, listen, I've gotten a great education off of this. As I've gone through this, I've had no clue about, what type of meaning books had in the library and the types of books that were out there. But there are books that have been challenged that teachers have used for years and years that for literature that I think won't be pulled from the shelves. And, I just hope that the people that are on the outside looking in understand that we're just trying to do the right thing for our students. And there are amendment rights. There are all sorts of things at stake that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. And it's not just as simple as I'm going to jerk that book off the shelf and be done with it. It has to be taken with a little bit more thoughtful approach.
But parents can still exercise a little bit of control.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whether the book is available at large, yes. Parents can say, look, I'd rather not my son or daughter.
100%. And that's one of the things that this policy is going to implement is the ability for us to have a form where the parents can say, look, I do not want my child to have access to this book. I'm hoping that that's enough to satisfy everyone to say, hey, look, if you don't want your children reading these books, we can take them away from them, that we don't have to have access for your child to have access to those books. And so I'm hopeful that's enough, but time will tell.
Well, you know what they say about book banning, though? It's the best way to get a kid interested in a book is to tell them they can't read it.
Sure.
It seems that message has been lost on a certain segment of the population. There's books that perhaps have been forgotten. One of my favorite books that have been subject to bans is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It's a great book about book banning.
Right.
And yet it pops up every now and then as pro-communist or anti-communist or, or something book. Will this new position at the high school, the media resource person, what role will they play in interacting with students who are interested in controversial books?
Oh, great question. I'm sure they'll handle that with kid gloves to a large degree, but I would say that their involvement with the kids directly as far as these books go is probably going to be very limited. I don't think you're going to have the librarian, so to speak, speaking with the children directly about those things as we go forward. I can't speak for them. I don't know how that will go. I don't have control over the day-to-day things within the schools, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of appetite for these folks to be talking about these things with the kids.
They're going to be kept at a kind of like, they'll be behind the scenes.
Yeah, I would think that would be the way to think about it. Yeah, right. Sure. We set the policy at the board level, and then they just sort of deal with the policy as we go through. Yep.
Okay, well, let's just talk about one more issue, and that is our how much faith and trust we have in our teachers. Because, again, until a couple of years ago, I mean, teachers, they're notoriously underpaid, especially over the last decade or so. North Carolina fell from being in the top 10 or 15 states for public education spending to like the bottom 10 or 15 states. And so it hasn't been a good time to be a teacher. And it seems to me that if you're still teaching today, it's because you really love teaching.
It. Right? Exactly.
And yet a lot of teachers are getting a lot of flack because they're seen as too permissive or too liberal or, whatever the term you want to use. And as a result, school boards have assumed this new responsibility, not just of being responsive to the community, but defending the teachers against overly aggressive parents.
Right.
I wouldn't call that a comfortable position to be in. Because it puts you between two sides, and in the past you didn't have to defend your teachers; they were pretty capable of doing that themselves. Do you ever think about what you need to do to keep encouraging people to come teach in Polk County, and how that might affect your thinking on who you hire?
Well, so we're fortunate in the regard that up to this point, our schools have a unique reputation of doing the things that you just talked about. That we give our teachers some autonomy to go in and teach the way they want to teach. Now, listen, curriculum comes down from state level to us, and they tell us what we can teach, what we need to teach, and then it's up to us to make sure we put the right things in the hands of our teachers to do that. But I think our teachers have been able to develop their own styles. They're not told to do things a certain way. Every teacher's a little unique. And I think teachers have come to Polk County for that very reason, because they know they can come and teach in their own unique way. And my fear is that with all of the hoopla that's going on right now, even within our small county, and it's on a national level, I know, but it's really impacting our schools in a negative way. And certainly our board's going to always defend our teachers, and I will defend our teachers to the nth degree. We have great teachers, and we unfortunately have seen a lot of turnover, but we still maintain some wonderful teachers within our school system and continue to bring great teachers in every day. I just hope the reputation that Polk County Schools has is able to be upheld during the crazy times we're in, and we can weather the environment and get through to a better point in time. Unfortunately, the funding situation, I don't know how we address that, because as you have said, yes, funding continues to be lesser and lesser for our schools every year. And that's a frustration. Our teachers are very poorly paid, but they do it because they love it, as you said earlier. And make no mistake about it, our teachers are unique, and they do love these kids. And I just want to continue to support them as best as I can.
And what about having to choose between defending a group of teachers or a single teacher and pressure from the community? I mean, how do you balance those?
Well, again, I joined the school board because I wanted to try and give back and help the school system. I don't know how I could help it any better than to defend the teachers if they're doing the right things, and I know our teachers are. If we ever run across a situation where a teacher's not, certainly we will deal with that accordingly, but our teachers are doing right by our kids. And so From my standpoint, it doesn't matter how many folks want to stand up against them. As long as I know our teachers are doing right, I'll defend them, and I don't mind doing so.
I'll just refer back to something you said earlier. Although sometimes it seemed there were a lot of people who were unhappy with what Polk Schools was doing, when you start looking at, especially go through Facebook or something like that, it's a handful of people, right? Same people over and over again who are kind of leading the discontent. So is it safe to say then, from your point of view, that you don't think there's an angry mob out there? It's
100%. Yep. Yeah. It's taken some time to realize it. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a people pleaser. So I like to, as I mentioned earlier, I like to see everybody happy. And I want to see everybody meet in the middle and get along. That's been a hard thing for me to get accustomed to not being able to do. And I just don't think this environment is going to create that, unfortunately. But as time has gone on, we have realized that the folks that are really seemingly the loudest represent a very small part of our overall community, and it's not a mob, as you said. And so I've been refreshed in the last couple of months to find out there are just a lot of people in our community that are very supportive of our schools and are very happy with the things that we have done, and recognize the fact that our teachers have continued to turn out a top-ranked school system year in and year out for a long time, and we hope that will continue.
Well, we can wrap up there, because that's a positive note.
I'm a glass half full kind of guy. Always have been. I try and find the positives in everything. I think if I don't, I'll drag myself down into a bad place. I'm just an upbeat kind of person, and always try to be. So I hope that I'll be able to convey that more as we go forward.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Good luck in the election, and we'll talk at some point in the future. Maybe not on this podcast, but off microphone.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. That was Mike Ashworth, Tryon member and chair of the Polk Schools Board of Education. In the next episode, I'll be talking with Rob Parsons, the incumbent for Saluda. Thanks for listening, and if you've got any comments or feedback or suggestions for guests, not just about elections for school board, but anything else of interest to Polk County, you can always get a hold of me at jamesh@polklore.com.